Hi. Today we're going to talk about a lot of policy debate stuff. You should only be watching this if you do policy debate. I would very, very highly almost require you to take some notes because there's so much stuff in this, and you're going to be able to use these notes that you've taken in your debate rounds. So when you're confused or you don't know what's happening, you can look at these notes. So we're just going to go through this. If at any time you need to stop and write things down and pause, just pause the video as we go. Okay. All right. So policy debate is often called cross-examination debate. So how we shorten it, because in debate we like to shorten everything, we call it CX debate for cross-examination. So policy debate, cross-examination debate. Also, it can be called team debate. The central focus of policy debate is on U.S. policy and trying to get it passed. Debaters role play by acting as a policy maker. They make policy and playing out possible scenarios. This debate type is very evidence-driven. A quote by Dr. Joe Bellin, who was the director of debate at Georgia State University in 2006, said, "At the beginning, though, it is important to understand that whatever else debate is, it is a game. It has teams, points, winners, losers, tournaments, and trophies. Like many games, it is not always fair, even though we try to make it fair. Most importantly, though, debate is supposed to be fun." So this is a game. Just like when you're playing Monopoly or another game, there are rules to follow. You earn points a certain way, and debate is the same. But in debate, I like to say we work hard and we play hard. Debate is fun, it's enjoyable, and you'll find that out at your first tournament. So there are a lot of rules and structures to debate, which we're going to go over today. Rules. So this is the structure of your speeches. You do need to know this, so definitely make sure to write this down. Every speaker gets one 8-minute speech and one 5-minute speech. Every speaker will be asked questions for 3 minutes, and every speaker will answer questions for 3 minutes. If you know those basics, you got it. Now there's a certain structure. So policy debate is a partner event. So I'm going to have my 4 debaters right here. This is affirmative team and this is the negative team. You first start by the first affirmative doing a constructive speech, which is called the 1AC. They give their speech. When they're done, the second negative will ask them questions, while the first negative is preparing their next speech. Second negative asks them questions. When they're done, they all sit down. This is Sophie. Then the first negative speaker, who is just preparing their speech, is going to speak while both affirmatives are sitting down and writing down what they have to say. When this speaker is done, the second affirmative speaker needs to prepare their speech. So the first affirmative speaker is going to ask questions of the negative. Then we are on the second affirmative speech. This person will speak in the 2AC. When their speech is done, the second negative is going to, or the first negative, is going to ask them questions. So the person who asks questions is the person who had just recently spoken. So then this person sits down and their partner gives their speech. Then we come to what's called the negative block. Negative block means there's 2 back-to-back negative speeches in a row. So the second negative speaker has just spoken and done their 8-minute speech. And now it's time for the first negative to give their what's called a rebuttal. So they give their rebuttal and it's 5 minutes and it's back to back with the negative speech. The only thing in between them is a cross-examination. So the first negative rebuttal goes, and then we go no cross-examinations in the rest of the debate. And cross-examinations are questioning periods. We go to the first affirmative, second negative, second affirmative, the round is over. Each team throughout the debate gets 8 minutes of preparation time or prep time. You can use that prep time before you are about to speak. So if your speech is next, you can use prep time before that. If your opponent's speech is next, you cannot use prep time before their speech unless you're using your opponent's prep time. So each team gets 8 minutes. So essentially everyone gets 16 minutes of prep. You only get to determine though when you take 8 minutes of it. Okay, so our topic, as we've talked about before, is going to be debated all year long. And it's debated all around the country. They all have the same topic. Okay, so your wording though, how you say it in your round is very important because each word has a meaning and it provides boundaries towards which team can debate which positions. Our resolution for this year is exactly the United States federal government should enact substantial criminal justice reform in the United States in one or more of the following: forensic science, policing, or sentencing. As novice in Idaho, you have 5 topic areas you can debate. Decriminalizing marijuana, abolishing ICE, getting rid of qualified immunity, getting rid of facial recognition software that police can use, and a 5th one. And you'll run that case all year long unless you decide to change your mind. Okay, so moving on to what the negative does. The negative has ground anywhere outside of the topic or to respond to the affirmative stuff. So the affirmative has to uphold the resolution and defend the topic. The affirmative will be advocating for change, while the negative just needs to negate the resolution by preferring the status quo. So what that means is the negative is going to say things are fine right now, or things are better if we don't do anything than if we do something. The status quo is what's going on in the world right now, how things look. So let's go over some key important terms. The first one is the resolution, or our topic. Next are the constructives, or the constructive speeches. That's the first half of the debate. Your 8-minute speeches plus 3 minutes of cross-examination between each one. That's the constructive block of the round. Constructives mean that you're presenting new evidence, new arguments, and you're building your case essentially. You're also establishing clash. And clash is where both teams' arguments directly refute each other's. Next is rebuttals. Rebuttal is the second half of the debate round, and that's mostly where you're relying on analysis. You're not allowed to bring up new arguments, but you can bring up new evidence. Mostly during rebuttals, you're responding to arguments and rebuilding your own stuff and really persuading the judge why they should vote for your side. Then we have the negative block. As I discussed before, that's both the 2 NC and the 1 NR speaking almost back to back. That means the negative has 13 minutes to speak for. You don't want to have the 8-minute speech say a bunch of stuff and then the 5-minute speech directly after it say the exact same things. That would be a waste of time. So instead, this 8-minute speech deals with some of the stuff in the round, and the 5-minute speech deals with some other stuff in the round. So it's called splitting the negative block. You divide up the work between those 2 speeches. Prep time, that's how much time you have to prepare outside of speaking time before you're about to speak. And the last one is cross-examination or cross-X or CX. And that's where you have 3 minutes to ask questions or get questions asked to you. Next is framework. Framework is not a common thing in the novice division, but it's a thing to know. And that's how the debaters are asking their judge to view the round or weigh the round. They say we should look at the things that hurt the most people. That is a framework. For saying we should look at economic impacts more, then that's a framework. The next thing is called a paradigm. It's spelled paradigm, but paradigm like a pair of dimes. And a paradigm is how somebody views something. So we all have paradigms in our lives that shape how we view things. A judge has the same. So a judge judges your round based off of how they want to see the round judged. It's their judging preference. They want you to speak slower. They want you to speak faster. If they prefer big, big bad things that will happen to the world, or if they prefer things that affect each of us in our daily lives, that helps you to know what specifically you should focus on in your debate. Next, we have offense and defense. If you've played a sport, you know what these are. Offense is where I'm giving new reasons to vote for my side or to support my side. Defense is answering arguments from the other side. So offense has the ball, they get to run it. Defense is just trying to stop the other team from scoring. So you need both offense and defense in order to win a round. Excuse me. The next one is the status quo, often spelled SQ. And as I said before, this is just the current system, how things look. The affirmative in policy will advocate that we need to change the status quo. The negative will say, nope, it's fine how it is. Then we have stock issues, and we've talked about stock issues already, but stock issues are really those core issues in the round. The affirmative has to uphold their stock issues. And we have clash, and again, that's responding directly to your opponent's arguments. The last thing is flowing, which is our form of note-taking. Policy has flowed a little bit different than the other types of debate, so we will focus on that in our next lesson. So the affirmative's responsibility in a round is the burden of proof. So the burden of proof lies with the affirmative. They must show why status quo policies are insufficient to solve a particular harm, thus overcoming presumption. So there's a lot of words there. So the burden of proof is based off of something Aristotle once said. He said, one who asserts must prove. The affirmative is asserting there's problems and asserting that this plan will fix the problems. So they have to prove it. The burden of proof lies on the affirmative. The negative, on the other hand, has a different responsibility. So they must clash with the affirmative propositions, showing why the status quo is better than changing things. And that's the burden of presumption or the burden of rejoinder. So we presume that things are fine. We don't really need to change things. Or there's too many bad things that will come from changing things, so we should keep things as they are in the status quo. Debaters on both sides need to win different, they need to respond to all of the clash within the round. Okay, so we've talked about the stock issues. We have harms, the bad things that are happening in the world. We have inherency, why something's not being done to fix the problem. We have the plan, what exactly you're going to do to fix the problem. Solvency, how passing your plan will fix the bad things, the harms. We have advantages, which is added bonuses to doing the plan. We also have topicality. The affirmative must be topical. They must follow the topic. If they are not following the topic, or they are going like above and beyond the topic, they are not topical. When that happens, the negative runs the stock issue of topicality, and they say, Judge, the affirmative is not topical. And because of that, they should not win the round. The affirmative must be topical. The last thing is significance. So I like that this talks about significance, because significance is often like an umbrella term to be used for addressing harms. It's saying that these harms create this big bad issue, and that big bad issue justifies us doing some sort of change. Okay, it's like, why do the harms matter? Why does it matter that people are dying? Why does it matter that we have a recession? This would give that reason. So you only would have significance if you do a certain version of your case, which we'll talk about in a minute. The last term is prima facie. That's this word, prima facie. And a prima facie case means that it's pretty sound, it's pretty solid. It means first glance. So it means a prima facie case means you've proven all of the stock issues and you meet all of the stock issues. Okay, your plan text. You have written your plan texts by now, and this should be a step-by-step explanation of how the affirmative will change the status quo to fix the harms. This is normally placed before solvency in your case. You can have what are called plan planks, but they are not required. So in your plan, it can be more basic, just saying what you're going to do, or it can be more complex, which might include having mandates, administration, enforcement, funding, spikes, or intent. So those are things you can specify in your plan under what are called plan planks, but they are not required to have in your physical plan. However, you do need to be able to respond to these. So even if you don't write who will enforce the plan in your plan text, you do need to know who is going to enforce this, who is going to make sure this plan happens and make sure it happens correctly. So be able to answer those questions even if you don't specify it in your plan text. And if you've written your plan text and you want to add plan planks to it, that's fine. Add them to it, resend it to me. Okay, so there's two formatting options. The first one is called a traditional case. Your cases as they are formatted traditionally. And that means that you have harms, inherency, plan, solvency, and advantages. Okay, those 5 things in order. Those things need to stay in order. You could title them contentions. So contention 1 harms, contention 2 inherency. That's not required, but you do need to title them at least harms, inherency, plan, solvency, advantages. So that is a traditional case. It's in the format of a problem solution. Problem, harms, solution, solvency. The next type of case is called a comparative advantage case. This is the type of case that more varsity tend to run. So a comparative advantage case is formatted to show that adopting the policy would have advantages over the status quo. So this would have advantages over the status quo, which means we should do it. So you have observations, and this notes observations are usually general statements about the problem area, which are important, but they don't really fit into the structure of the advantages. So these are optional. So usually you have just a couple cards under these observations. You could have 1 observation, you could have 2, and then you're going to have your plan. Plan is pretty much the same as in a traditional case. The main part of a comparative advantage case are your advantages, and you fit a lot of the stock issues within these advantages. So in these, you're going to prove that the affirmative does something better than the status quo. So you first start these advantages with significance. You put harms in there and add an impact to it. This bad thing is happening, and this is why it's important. Then you have inherency. Why isn't something being done about this harm? And then you have solvency. How the plan fixed this harm. So it seems really similar to the traditional style, but instead of having 3 harms, 3 solvency, you kind of put them all in your advantages. Okay, so you would have 1 harm, 1 inherency, 1 solvency in 1 advantage under 1 topic. Next one, you'd have 1 harm, 1 inherency, 1 solvency under the next topic. If you'd like to change your case into this format, go ahead and do it. I've given you paper copies of your cases, and if not, they're in the classroom. And that's why I gave them to you, so you could move them around in whatever format you decide, either traditional or comparative advantage. The last thing is called fiat. And fiat means it will pass, or in Latin, let it be done. So fiat means, fiat is implied by the affirmative, meaning that we're going to assume this will pass. So we're not going to spend time in the debate saying this isn't going to pass through Congress or the president won't let this thing happen, because that's a debate that we want to focus on the exact specifics of this plan and not if the plan will actually pass. So we assume fiat, and then we kind of don't have that other debate. We don't have to debate on whether this will pass. We just get to focus on the specifics of the case. Here are 2 resources you can go to, but that's some basics about policy debate, the structure of the round, your stock issues, how you can format your case, and the different sides in the debate. Please let me know if you have any questions, and then next we'll talk about the negative and what positions they can run.